in like a.
Good morning. My name is Justin Villery with the Committee of 70. We are very excited to continue our Studio C70 student candidate interview series. Today we are joined by Josh Prince, candidate for the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania in the Republican primary. And he will be interviewed by Christian Rabley's 8th grade civics group at Greater Johnstown High School. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rabley. Thank you very much, Mr. Prince, for being here. Really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me.
All right, good morning. So today's a big day for us in our class because not just because we have a special guest here with us in class, but because it's an opportunity for our young students to step into the role of civic leaders and critical thinkers, and they'll get to interview and participate in the process a little bit here. So we're interviewing Josh Prince, the candidate for Pennsylvania's Commonwealth Court, and he's someone who could shape major decisions that affect schools and local governments and constitutional rights. And I have a student representative here who's going to do a little welcome before we can start with the first question. Go ahead, Simon.
Good morning, Mr. Prince.
Morning, Simon. How are you?
How are you?
Doing well.
This is our 8th period civics class, and right now we're learning about the judicial branch, and we were gonna ask you some questions.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
Thank you. And I was gonna say the first one, and it was, do you have difficult keeping bias when you're in court cases?
That's a great question.
Just have him kind of give us an overview of himself and his work first.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start real quick with a little quick overview. So I was born and raised in Berks County, Pennsylvania. I went to McGill University in Montreal, where I double majored in political science and world religions. I came back stateside. I went to Widener University Law School in Harrisburg, graduated with honors as well as a member of the Law Review. About 2.5 years ago, had an opportunity of a lifetime, got to marry the love of my life and my best friend, Jessica. And we just found out recently she's pregnant with our baby girl and she's going to be due in September. So we are really stoked about that. And a lot of why I'm running, and we may get into that a little later, has to do with that, as well as the question that you asked about bias in the court. I think a lot of people are talking about the fact that there's been an erosion of public confidence in the judiciary. And a lot of it stems from what we would refer to as political non-judicial decisions. The courts are only ever supposed to simply uphold the law as written and the Constitution as intended. Where a situation arises that the law needs to be interpreted, that's where the court is supposed to step in and assist in that regard. But that is not for the court to what we call legislate from the bench, meaning the judiciary is not supposed to say, hey, look, we don't like what the law enacted by the General Assembly here in Pennsylvania is. And so the way in which we're going to get around it is through the guise of interpretation. And we're going to change the law and its application simply by doing it through interpretation. So we really do need to work on getting the politics out of the courtroom. We need to restore public confidence in the judiciary. One of the things I've talked about with a lot of people during my candidacy is that currently, under the law, anyone who wants to run for judge must run under a particular party platform. So you must either run as a Republican or a Democrat, as an independent, as a libertarian. You can't just run for judge. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to get the politics out of candidacies for judge because at the end of the day, there shouldn't be any type of difference. You should be simply, where necessary, upholding the law as written in the Constitution as intended. We see a lot of instances where people bring litigation knowing that there are already existing cases deciding the issue, but want the judiciary to be judicially active and change what the law is. So one of the major tenets of my platform and my candidacy is trying to restore faith in the judiciary if I am blessed with this opportunity to serve everyone in this Commonwealth.
Awesome, thank you. You said you went to Widener?
Yes, I did.
I think our local senator may have gone to Widener, Senator Wayne Langerholk.
I think you're right.
Yeah, okay. Nice. So we were just a couple of us were with him yesterday for a Senator for the Day program. We were talking about something that you just mentioned that just slipped my mind, so.
I'll say this, it is very interesting that the supermajority of our judges here in the Commonwealth, at least our appellate court judges, went to Widener University Law School. So
Wow.
it does have a history of really forming future judges, and it's great to see.
Very cool. All right, we'll open it up for additional questions. Yeah, go ahead and you can take the first. Your highlight. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Kalina, and I
Hi,
just have
Kalina.
a question. Compared to the criteria you need to meet to become a judge or even a lawyer, how important are people skills?
I think people skills are extremely important. You have to be able to connect with people. You have to be able to know how to speak with individuals, whether it be an attorney if you're a sitting judge, or even someone we call a litigant, one of the participants in the courtroom, whether it's a witness, someone who just saw what had occurred, or whether it's actually the person who's brought that type of court action. So it's really important to connect with people, know how to treat people fairly. A lot of times we talk about the fact that we need candidates with good judicial temperament. And a lot of times when we hear temperament, our mind immediately goes to demeanor. And that's obviously a huge aspect of judicial temperament. But we also need candidates, as well as those who are elected, who are going to ensure that a part of that judicial temperament is humility. It's ensuring consistency in the law. It also includes fairness and always having a deep respect for both the law and everyone who's there before that judge or that court. It also includes ensuring that the law is never weaponized against any particular person or group of people. And so there's a lot of different aspects, let me say, to judicial temperament, which also involves being able to communicate with people.
Thanks. Um, who wants to go next? Amir? Yeah. Maybe a question that will remind you that they are 13 and 14-year-old.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
my name is Amir Cofield.
Hi,
I
Amir.
wanted to know what type of hobbies you like, what sports teams you like. I like the 49ers. I played for football for like 5 years.
Awesome. Is that what you want to do later in life?
Yeah.
Play football? Well, I wish you the best in that endeavor. So to answer your question, I have a lot of different hobbies. I love learning new things. I have done everything from installing a central air conditioning system in a house to doing electrical. I've done tiling. One of my loves is actually weightlifting. I love going to the gym. That's kind of my stress reliever. With being an attorney, there's always a lot of stress involved in that. So I always look forward to getting to the gym because it really helps me in that regard. But I also love things like camping, hunting, you name it. Like I said, I pretty much enjoy it. Also with my wife, we go out kayaking a lot. Love to spend time in the outdoors. We also have two dogs, Lucia, who's known as Baby Shark, as well as our husky, whose name is Rocky, and I, kiddingly call him the raccoon because of Rocky the raccoon. But we do a lot of outdoor activities with our pups as well. And so, there's a lot of different hobbies that I have and I love, and I just honestly love learning new things. The more opportunities I have, I always take them up.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing some of your personal information. I'm sure a lot of your interviews ask you about your policy positions and your education, which we will get to those as well. But
Okay.
I like those questions that remind us, what they're curious about and what's important. Go ahead, Ma.
Hi, my name is Maya.
Hi, Maya.
My question is, what do you believe makes a law unfair?
That's a great question. What makes a law unfair? Well, first and foremost, we have to look at whether it is being used to be weaponized against a set group. A lot of times these come down to constitutional issues that we have to look at. We have different constitutional protections for different minority groups as well as majority groups, but our founders wanted to ensure that we always protected the rights of the minority. That's why we have a republic. A lot of people will say we have a democracy and that in truth, that our founding fathers wanted to provide us with a democracy, and that's not true, because with a true democracy, a simple majority rules. Our founding fathers gave us a republic because they wanted to ensure that we protected those minority positions and minority rights. So it's not a just simple majority rule that gets to dictate, so that we can protect all those minority groups. And that's something that's truly important to me. I have litigated a number of cases where laws I've contended were unconstitutional, and I've done it successfully. And that's really about protecting the people. And I've handled all sorts of issues. One I even handled somewhat relevant to you guys was a school due process case. I had an individual who was 18 years of age, still in high school, and they wanted to expel him. And they basically did not provide him with any notice of an expulsion hearing. They did give notice to his parents, but never informed him. So he never had an opportunity to come to the hearing, never had an opportunity to say anything in his defense or anything of that nature. And so that was the type of issue that I litigate. And so we filed suit for him because he was actually expelled right before his prom without being given what we call that due process. And so we were successful in challenging that case in the Commonwealth Court, the court I'm running for. And it was what we call a case of first impression, meaning the Commonwealth Court had never dealt previously with whether someone who is 18 years of age and facing an expulsion hearing had to be provided by the school district with notice of that expulsion hearing. And sure enough, the Commonwealth Court found in his favor. We then filed a federal civil rights action in the federal courts, where we basically sought to have the records of his expulsion destroyed so it wouldn't affect his college career and thereafter, as well as to get him some money for the violation of his rights that he then used for when he went to college. So, like I said, there's all different aspects to the law, but we always have to make sure that it's applied fairly and equally to everyone.
Very interesting. Thank you. Charisma, would you be willing to ask your question? And I want to add something to it afterwards. Get on up there.
Okay, my name is Charisma Jones, and I was wondering, how do you feel about teens being charged as adults?
And
Okay.
just to clarify that, so we try to vote every Tuesday. So we do this thing called On Tuesdays We Vote, and every Tuesday we get a different question, and the students are asked to vote and practice, exercising that civic muscle. And we read a bill from a Pennsylvania lawmaker about teens being charged as adults. And I believe he was proposing that no teen should be charged as an adult, but it was being introduced to Congress. And Charisma, while she was doing some research on this candidacy, on this race, she was curious about if you had a stance on teens being charged as adults.
Awesome. Well, I don't have a specific position on it off the top of my head. I will say that I think the law has to be flexible. We have to look at the particular situation and what it involves. There have been situations, even here in Pennsylvania, where individuals, usually over 16 years of age, have been treated as adults. Sometimes it comes down to whether the individual has been emancipated, meaning their parents are no longer their parents through a court action. And so sometimes if you are able to be emancipated, the courts look at you as already being an adult because you no longer have any direct parental oversight. So there are certain situations, especially when you have heinous offenses such as murder and things of that nature, where the district attorney may try to have the individual who's under 18 years of age charged as an adult. There needs to probably be more research done into where the juvenile brain starts to develop more into an adult brain. Obviously, you guys are learning a lot. They always talk about in our youth, we're kind of like a sponge absorbing information in, but we all make mistakes. We all have things in our past that we regret. And so the idea of the law of generally not treating a teenager as an adult or someone under 18 as an adult comes from the fact that we recognize that we're all growing, we're all learning, we're all going to make mistakes, and we don't want someone who makes a, non-homicidal type of mistake to end up having their entire future destroyed as a result. I can also tell you, if you are charged as a juvenile, that we don't per se convict juveniles. The most we do is adjudicate them delinquent, which is in essence an equivalency to a conviction, but for juveniles. And so the juvenile court system is very different than the adult court system. There are opportunities for the juvenile to meet with the judge and for the judge to basically come up with alternatives than, depending on what the offense was, than an adjudication of delinquency. It was something a number of years ago, there was a vacancy here on the Berks County Court of Common Pleas. That was a situation where, because there was a vacancy until the next municipal cycle, the governor could appoint someone. And I had actually thrown my hat in the ring for that. And I really wanted to work with kids because I believe that there are individuals who end up in the juvenile justice system where it's a lack of parental oversight. It's so many different facets that may have occurred in their lives. And I do believe that if a judge takes the time and interest in those juveniles, that there's a possibility to change the course of their life and to help them find their way and get back on track. Because at the end of the day, what we want most is for everyone to be a productive citizen of our Commonwealth and of the United States.
You have a question?
Hi, my name's Amari.
Hi.
Why are you running for a seat on the Commonwealth Court?
Okay, well, thank you. So there's a couple reasons. One I mentioned are the political non-judicial decisions we see being rendered by courts across the country. It's not specifically just here in Pennsylvania or even just the Commonwealth Court. And I can give you an example of a case that I'm currently litigating that I would contend involved a political non-judicial decision. So a statute enacted by our General Assembly here in Pennsylvania basically required the Pennsylvania State Police to perform a background check instantaneously. Now, I suspect if I query all of you, we'd come up with one, maybe two definitions for instantaneously. But in that case, the judge decided to, under the guise of interpretation, define it as a reasonable amount of time, the reasonableness to be determined by the Pennsylvania State Police. So if the Pennsylvania State Police believed 2 years was a reasonable amount of time, that was equating to instantaneously. And I think all of you can probably see that that has no tethering or no relationship whatsoever to what we all know means instantaneously. So I really want to work hard at restoring the public's confidence in the judiciary. It's one of the major platforms or tenets of my candidacy. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is I have a little baby girl on the way. And I truly worry for her future. We need to have everyone be respectful of our three co-equal branches of government, and we need to ensure that the judiciary is always there as our last line of defense against the government. And it's actually interesting that the Commonwealth Court is very unique in this nature. It's the only court in the nation that's designed to be a court of direct government oversight. It's also the only court in the nation that acts both as a trial court and an appellate court, depending on the legal issue before it. So anytime you sue the Commonwealth, a Commonwealth officer or agency, it actually acts as a trial court where it takes in evidence, hears testimony, makes credibility determinations, and then issues findings of fact and conclusions of law. Whereas if a Commonwealth agency issues a decision you don't agree with, let's say the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue contends you owe a tax and you disagree with it, any appeal of that determination goes up before the Commonwealth Court. So that government oversight is so extremely important and affects us in our everyday lives. And other types of issues that go up before the court include educational matters. If someone has an IEP for assistance when they're in schools, special tutoring or training that's provided in the schools because of a disability or such, those are all issues that can go up before the Commonwealth Court. Anything involving the government is a situation where either the Commonwealth Court will hear that case as a trial court or an appellate court.
Awesome. I know we have like 6 or 7 minutes left, and I know there's still a couple kids who want their questions,
Okay.
so maybe we can shift into a little speed round here. We'll try to get 4 or 5. Let's go, Joel, Vanessa, Kimani. Okay, you can come up here and a little speed round.
Hello, I'm Joel,
Hi, Joel.
and currently we're studying landmark Supreme Court cases in civics. And I was wondering if you have a favorite landmark case, and if so, which one?
All right, so I do a lot of Second Amendment litigation. So I would say Bruin versus New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is a case where our U.S. Supreme Court said that the Second Amendment applies to individuals, not just the militia.
Hello.
Hi.
So my name is Vanessa, and in school right now, we're learning about the qualifications for presidency, congressman, and Supreme Court. So I was wondering if there are any specific requirements for your Commonwealth Court.
So yeah, that's a great question. You do need to be an attorney to be able to run to be a judge on the Commonwealth Court. Beyond that, there aren't any limitations other than you can't be older than 75. Under the Pennsylvania Constitution, any judge must retire by the age of 75. So that's different than the federal system where you can remain a judge as long as you want once you are appointed.
I wonder if that's something they would ever consider adding to the presidential qualifications.
Hi, my name's Kimani, and I have a question. You support gun rights, but since guns are the leading cause of death for children in America, and there's roughly about 7 deaths concerning guns a day with children, do you think that they should teach gun safety in school?
So that's a great question. And yeah, I do believe no different than the DARE programs. I assume they still have DARE programs in the schools. They did when I went through that deals with drugs. But there are even some schools that still do have firearm safety training in them, as well as the fact that there are still some schools that have rifle teams. So like Perkiomen Prep is a school that does still have a rifle team at its school, and it's a high school. So yeah, I am all in favor of safety because we definitely want to make sure that no one is erroneously injured or negligently injured by a firearm.
She said that was a good answer. Simon and then Glenn, maybe? Couple more here.
Going off of what Kamani said, is there a way that you can restrict gun rights, but without interfering with the Second Amendment?
So that's a great question, and that's a question that the U.S. Supreme Court recently dealt with. It involved a domestic violence situation, and the U.S. Supreme Court said in that situation it was unique. The person had a number of different issues in his background, including after the domestic violence situation, actually shooting at a restaurant because he was upset with someone inside, and a number of other instances. And there, the U.S. Supreme Court said yes, he could be denied his Second Amendment rights. So there are a number of different cases pending. I can tell you, I had a situation where a client forged a PennDOT window exemption. He wanted to basically have tinted windows, and back in the day, PennDOT would give an exception. He had gone through the process previously. It was an arduous process. He got a new car, and he didn't want to have to go through the process again. So he put the new vehicle identification number on the old exemption. As a result, that was a misdemeanor of the first degree, which caused him to be federally prohibited under the current laws from being able to purchase, possess, utilize firearms and ammunition. That was a case where we brought what's called a Second Amendment as applied challenge, arguing that it was unconstitutional as it related to him and his conviction to strip him of his Second Amendment rights, and the federal courts agreed with us. And that's just one example of that type of case that I have litigated. So, like I said, the courts are currently struggling with figuring out that balance.
Yeah. We'll do one more. All right, then we'll wrap up.
Okay, it's me again. On the Philadelphia Citizen website, it says you originally stated that if you were not endorsed by your political party, that you would drop out. What made you change your mind? And did you use that as kind of like fuel to be even more motivated to run?
So that's a great question, and we've documented it on our website. Unfortunately, there were some things that occurred during the endorsement vote that were not right at all, and the party broke its covenant with me to provide a fair process. But I had made a covenant with my wife that I wasn't going to run if I didn't get the endorsement, and she is actually a state committee member. She saw what all had occurred, and she was very upset with it. And so, nevertheless, I said I wasn't going to run because I had made that covenant with her and she hadn't breached anything in relation to it with me. And the morning of the first day of circulating petitions for signatures, because as a judicial candidate, you need a minimum of 1,000 signatures with at least 100 from 5 different counties. She came down and said to me, she's like, Josh, you're running. And I said, running? Running for what? She says, you're running for judge. I said, I am? She said, yeah, everything that's happened is wrong. You've always given a voice to the voiceless and those too fearful to use their voice. You stand for what's right. What happened to you isn't right. We have to give the people a choice in the primary. And so that's really what caused me to run because, as I said, the party had already breached the covenant with me to provide a fair process. But I wanted, if I was going to do it, it needed to be approved by my wife as well.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity that when this bell rings, they're going to be dismissed and I can kind of take a minute or two to debrief with you. But thank you so much. What a special opportunity for us to bring the judicial branch to life and have them get some real time with you to learn more about what a judge does and who you are as a person and a candidate. So thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate Committee of 70 for setting this up and connecting us. What an awesome little project.
Thank you, guys. Hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mr. Rabley. Thank you, Mr. Prince, for jumping on and answering the students' questions. As a reminder for those watching, Election Day is May 20th. Mr. Prince is running in the Republican primary in Pennsylvania. You have to be registered as a Republican to vote in the Republican primary, Democrat to vote in the Democratic primary. So make sure to check your voter registration status. But thank you very much. We look forward to talking to you, and good luck on Election Day.
Well, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. If you have more, please let me know. I love doing things like this.